By the way, I played that beat. I wanted to tell you this now. It was a cue for the cameraman. I asked them not to record or stream the storytelling segment of my keynote. And I'll talk about that a little later on. So thank you. Thank you for listening up. The cue was the drums. Let's get down to business, shall we? I've only got a little bit of time left. When we're talking about my role as a Takitua, it is a uniquely Cook Islands word, okay? It is one that I searched for myself because I couldn't call myself a taunga kōrero, which is a traditional word for someone who is an orator. And I rang up members in my community and I said, I need a name for storyteller because the title storyteller in my language didn't really exist. And so what I call the voice of the Cook Islands community, Mr. Bernard Tairea in Auckland, he said to me, I think you should call yourself a Takitua. A Takitua is a word or title that is made up of two words. Taki means to guide, to lead, to carry. Tua is the word for story. And so you smush them together and you get storyteller. So how did I get to this point of being a storyteller? How did I get to this point of standing in front of you today and giving this keynote? I ask myself that question a lot. It is a journey that started, I believe, with all of those incarnations that came before. Do you remember? Broadcaster, news reporter, music management producer, media communications consultant, oral historian, Pacific Arts project manager. So it's a story that has been going for many, many years. I just didn't realize it until very recently. When I talk about where my story begins, it's something that came about in, I'd have to say, 2014. For many, many years, I'd been telling stories as the project manager and a tutor at the Pacifica Arts Centre, and I want to talk a bit more about the Pacifica Arts Centre a little later on. So I was teaching music, drums and dance as part of my work, and I was also teaching or talking about storytelling. And I would tell the story of Sina and the eel, except my version was Ina and tuna, okay? And it wasn't until 2014 that I met an artist who I was facilitating work for, and she said to me, you realise you're a storyteller? And I went, whatever. I've just got a big mouth. And she says, no, it's an art practice. It's a real art form. And it took me a little while to accept that. And when I did accept it, I realised that I had a lot of work to do. I needed to do some research. If I was going to tell stories with integrity, authenticity, and in a way that honours my Pacific ancestors, I needed to go back home. I am a daughter of Te Moana Nui Akiwa, but my ancestry actually takes me to the Cook Islands via 4 islands. 1, Mangaia. The second, Aitutaki. And the other 2, Atiu and Mitiaro. I wanted to go back to Mangaia, the roots of my ancestry. It was important for me to go there and collect stories. So I underwent this research project. I thought about it long and hard, as I want to do. And I said, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to speak to the people. I'm going to collect stories. I'm going to take those stories and help it build my art practice. I went to Mangaia and all plans went out the window. The first step was I needed to connect to the land. I needed to take off my shoes and walk in the dust. I needed to walk the steps that my grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-great-grandmother had walked. I needed to touch the roads that they travelled on. I needed to know about this land that my ancestors came from before I go there to speak to its people. This was a difficult step, collecting stories and talking to the people of these islands. This woman is called Inangaro Papatua, and she was what I was told is the great storyteller of Mangaia. Sadly, she passed on at the beginning of this year, and that really affected me when I heard that news. At first, when I asked her to share with me her stories, she was extremely reluctant. She said, "Oh, you don't want to hear stories about the past, that's from the darkness." And I said, please do share it with me. Eventually, after sitting with her for some time, she started sharing stories. But it wasn't until after I left that I heard later on she was inspired to tell more. And my regret is that I didn't get to go back and see her and spend some time with her to collect those stories. By the way, we collected these stories via video, and we also collected them we just recorded the audio. Phones are great things to carry when you're doing research projects, right? I went through the caves and found out stories of the skeletal remains that are hidden in there, because when Christianity came to Mangaia, all of these old ways had to be put aside. So carvings, bones, all the rest of it were hidden in caves. This man is Clark Motairi. Clark is the only one who knows the ins and outs of this cave, and as we walked through, I realised if I'd have tried this by myself, I wouldn't even have come back. I wouldn't be here today. So he shared stories with me as well. And it was also important that I went back home, went back to Mangaia to receive the blessing in a way of my ancestors. So I sat at their graves. I spent some time there looking at the plots in the middle of the mountain, Rangimotia, after going through much of the bush. And I left Mangaia with very few stories in the end, but a sense of knowing that I was on the right path. The next part of the trip, because she's a beautiful lady, was when we went to Aitutaki. I admit there were some cocktails involved in this one as well. Again, it was about connecting to the land and connecting to the people there and hearing their stories. I took many of those stories with me and I collected them up, but even to this day, many of them I haven't pulled out or I haven't used because I feel that there is a time for everything to be shared, and I should know from my blood memories when that time is. So we came back from Mangaia and Aitutaki and Rarotonga, came back to my job here in Auckland at the Pacifica Arts Centre. And it's important to mention the Pacifica Arts Centre is the home of the Pacifica Mamas, who many, many years ago, as I said, came to New Zealand, and they were looking for a home for their arts and their culture, and they were looking for a way to pass on or continue transmitting this. The Pacifica Mamas are a group of knowledge holders, master artists, elders, community leaders, and they have really been on the forefront of taking Pacific arts in a way and ensuring that with integrity and empathy and with honour, it is moved little by little along the digital platform. So when we got to the Pacifica Arts Centre, I'm reminded again that the vision of the Pacifica Arts Centre stands on 3 pillars: arts, culture, and community. And I could talk to you about the Pacifica Mamas, who are the heart of the Pacifica Arts Centre, the place that I work currently, but I think it's probably a better idea if you hear it from them.
Tumu te varo takui pukaria, ki te moana nui a kiwa, taki tumu te waka. A pe is actually the way you introduce yourself. Me tā akarua ki tore a iwa, o ki mai a taki tumu I reira. It's always a strong statement to actually open up who you are. Tangi ia, vai ranga noa ku parekura, ko pā, ko kainoko. Uri ake ki a koe e te muri motia. And that's what pe is about. It's making the connection to the people. Turo ki Takitumu. Ya imato umane, ya imato umane. The mamas come here to learn from each other. They share a lot of the bigger picture around the Pacific, you know, who we are. Our art is always our passion, our strength. It's what makes us who we are. The ultimate goal is actually to provide the best to those who will come to the centre, to provide the best of who Pacific is all about. Being able to demonstrate an honest integrity of where you come from, maybe from the island of Tuaratini, from Samoa, all that is part of the delivery service we have down there. And we're very proud of it, and we need actually to say, this is our ultimate goal. We've got to provide the people out there, or the children that comes here on a daily basis, the best of the Pacific.
My name is Teuke.
Oh, was that the end of it? I actually wanted to see that part there, but that's okay. Okay, so the reason why I showed that video is because it came out of a project that the Pacifica Mamas did, which was a participatory video project. And you know, these elders 70 years and over who have very limited knowledge of things digital, I can barely get them to reply to my text messages to say, Mama, are you coming today? And they don't check emails, but there we go. No, yes, no. If it happens, it happens. And so these mamas, they had the opportunity to take home cameras. And using this participatory video idea, they were in control of the information that they collected about themselves. They were in control of how that information was then disseminated, or the access to that information. And that video there, by the way, is just a short snippet of 12 minutes, and you can find it on YouTube. It's under the title Pacifica Mamas. And so that was very, very important. When we came back from the islands after doing this research project on Moana Pacific storytelling, I came back to the Pacifica Mamas, and they pretty much reactivated for me and my colleague the storytelling movement that I call the Moana Pacific storytelling. So we exploded onto the storytelling scene in our little community. That's supposed to be an explosion. It looks more like a splash, I know. And there was a flurry of activity. So we were storytelling in the glam sector a lot. And we've gone backwards and forwards and so we were in libraries, we were in art galleries, we were storytelling in museum spaces, we were storytelling at community events, and these are just some of the images. There you go, the 4 images. So you can see, I know my weight goes up and down in these photos, doesn't it? It's the story of my life. Okay, so there was lots of that storytelling going on. And do you know where it led us? It led us here. We did the storytelling in a real concentrated effort, and I don't know how, but this is the digital world, right? And people in India heard about Pacific storytellers in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and they sent us an invitation to the Chennai Storytelling Festival, and they said, come and share those stories. And we were a bit nervous, well, I was, because I thought, half of those people don't even know what a waka is. What's a waka? Half of them hadn't even seen the ocean. So when I'm talking about being a child of the ocean, they don't know what that looks like. But we went there, and I'm proud to say that on the international stage, Pacific stories held up. Really did. And it resonated because there were values in there that those people understood. And so the story, not the most flattering of images, is it? Anyway, we'll move along. And so our work in India with those communities and international storytellers meant that Moana Pacific storytelling suddenly spread out. We connected with a storyteller from New York, and we're hoping to get to New York soon. From New York, we connected with storytellers from all over Asia, and we've been asked over and over to come back and share our Pacific stories. What makes that special is because it's our voices telling our stories and being in control of how those stories are told. And so when we're telling our stories, I know that I had to go back home to get the permission of my ancestors. I was able to collect, but I had to do it with empathy. I had to remember that the objects that were given to me and the stories that were given to me, those were not mine. I was merely a guardian, a keeper, and it was my job to look after it and pass it on with integrity. And so out of that whole movement of storytelling all over, we ended up, I know it feels a bit backwards because you should really form the group first and then you do the work. No, we did the work first and then we kind of went, oh, we better form a little group. So we are the Takitua, storytellers connecting past and present through storytelling, and that's my colleague who's also the director of the Pacifica Arts Centre, Jacinda Stowers, the one not holding the drum, not the other one. You get it? Okay, so nuts and bolts. What am I talking about? Collection. When we're collecting information, when you're collecting stories, when you're collecting artifacts, when you're collecting data, I want you to remember that you need to be deserving of the knowledge. Okay? You really do. And how do you become deserving of the knowledge? Well, it really is about coming from the right place. I always say that intention is really important. If your intention is just so that you can get your PhD or just so that you can get famous in the world of academics, then that's probably not the right intention. How do you get the right intention? You connect and you talk to those communities and the people in those communities. Preservation, again, this is stuff you already know. I'm talking to archivists and data collectors all over this room, so you don't need to see that. But what do I think about the stories or Moana Pacific storytelling? I think that it's about unlocking secrets. You see, I heard something a couple of weeks ago, and someone stood up and he's got his full tatau tattooing all over him, and he said, "We have been collecting, archiving data for thousands of years. And we have been doing it through tatau." And I have a live prop here and I want her to stand up. Stand up. She missed the plane this morning, so I put the image up on the screen because I was worried she wouldn't make it. But she's got a pretty arm, doesn't she? So that's that image there. Storing data. Okay? She's been collecting history in this. We do it in our carvings. This is an image of a church pillar in Maya. And in our handcrafts, every one of those patterns and stitches and weaves means something. So you saw back there, I have a car key. Because I believe that the story is the key to unlocking the secrets of those things. And just like my car key, and I know I don't drive a BMW or a Bentley, it's a Honda. But just like my car key, I don't just give it to anybody. I have to know that you're worthy of driving my car. I know, otherwise I'd give it to the 17-year-old who's still on his learner's license, my son. And so you have to be deserving of that. But here's the other thing. You also have to accept that sometimes the giver of that information is not going to want to give it to you. And that's a really hard thing for archivists, for data collectors, for academics to come to. It was hard for me to come to when I was in the middle of doing research because I thought, well, why won't you tell me the story? But each person who holds that information, who holds that story, has the right to decide whether or not you are worthy to receive it. Scary stuff, I know. So when we're talking about collection, again, how do you connect? My suggestion to you is that we do it with empathy, we do it with integrity. And you know what helps? Get the voice of that community involved. If it's not your community and you want to go and do the research and collect information from that community, get that community involved. Find someone who is of that bloodline, because they will help you to understand that when you hold the object, when you hold the artifact, it is imbued with history. It's imbued with memories. It has sometimes the blood, sweat, and tears of tupuna ancestors in that piece. When you are collecting and you are not from that community, I encourage you, I urge you to connect with those communities and work in partnership with them in the collection process. When you're preserving, when you're conserving, I want you to do it again at that point there, because they will tell you how the bowl is supposed to sit. They will tell you which way the basket is supposed to be stored. They will tell you whether you've got your carving upside down or not. And believe it or not, it does happen. And access, yeah, that's important. I'm often worried about free and easy access to some of our arts, our artifacts. I made it a point to say the story that I tell today must not be streamed or recorded. Because before you tweet it, before you share a post on Facebook, before you send it out in a mass email or however else you want to disseminate it, you need to ask yourself the question, am I doing this from the right place? Does everyone, absolutely everyone who has access to the digital platform, do they actually have the right to see this? And if they do, will they understand it, or will they take it out of context? So I don't have any answers for you, but I do challenge you that when you're talking about collection, preservation, and access, that you're working in connection or partnership with the communities that you're collecting from. And so on that note, time is good. I love this timer thing down here. I leave you with this image of Maya, and I'm going to finish on a story. It's a very quick one. You know, I refer to the Pacific Ocean as Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, okay? Te Moana Nui a Kiwa is actually my son's middle name. I went on a voyage one year, and when I came back, I was told by the people on this voyage in canoe, when you have your child, this is the name you should give him. He often asks me, Mum, what on earth does that name mean? I said, it's the Pacific Ocean. He says, well, why didn't you just call me Ocean? Because that's such a cool name. So I tell him this story. Kiwa was a guardian of the ocean, and he had a wife called Inemoana. Inemoana was the love of his life. Oh, we've heard that before. She was a goddess that could control the waves, te ngaru. And he loved her so much that he gave her children, the octopus, the turtle, and the shark. And they say for eons, Inemoana and Kiwa, the great guardian of the Pacific Ocean, they lived happily together. As does sometimes happen, Kiwa started to wander, and he ventured onto the land more and more. And when he went on the land, who should he see but Papa Inua walking along the sand? And being attracted to Papa Inua, he connected with her. And together they had the lakes, the rivers, and the streams. And of course the lakes and the rivers and the stream eventually all end up where? into the ocean. So Ine Moana finds the lake and rivers and streams coming into the ocean, and straight away she knew that her man had been up to no good. He was carrying on with these two women, and she raged. And the waves, which were once calm for thousands of years, suddenly grew ferocious and pounded against the shore, pulling away at the land, eroding it as much as she could, because hell hath no fury. And so when we talk about the ocean, te moana nui a kiwa, we are reminded with this cautionary tale that man should not have two wives. And you should never, ever make a woman angry. And on that note, me taki mata ki a koutou katoa, mahalo nui loa, vina ka wakalevu, whakau e lahi, whawhitai lava, malo aupito.